It says, they have said, Allah has taken a son, exalted is he. He is the one free of need. To him belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth. You have no authority for this claim. Do you say about Allah that which you do not know? Now, note that Yusuf Ali, which is the third translation down, has a different way of putting it. It says, they say, Allah hath begotten a son. Glory be to him, he is self-sufficient. His are all things in the heavens and on earth. No warrant have ye for this. Say you about Allah what ye know not. So I don't remember now why I started looking at the grammar, but I started digging into it, and I wanted to look at the verb Allah has taken. Because what does that mean? Allah has taken a son. So Pickthall also has Allah hath taken, and then in parentheses, unto him a son. Shakir says Allah has taken a son to himself. Muhammad Sarwar really goes out there. Some people, this must be like the New Living Translation for the Quran. Some people have said that God has begotten a son. God is too glorious to have a son. God is self-sufficient. To him belongs all that is in the heavens and the earth. In this, you people have no authority. Do you ascribe to God things which you have no knowledge, of which you have no knowledge? Mohsen Khan says, they, Jews, Christians, and pagans say, Allah has begotten a son, children. Glory be to him, he is rich. And Arbery has, God has taken to him a son. So what I was looking at was the specific word to take. And so you can go to the word by word portion, this is where it really is very, very useful. Because, for example, has taken, Allah has taken, third person masculine singular form 8, a perfect verb, and you can then create a concordance out of this and see what other place appears in. So you can go to concordance, and here's all the other places where this is found. And you'll notice as I'm looking at this, it's take, all the way down until you get to where we are. Allah has taken. And so I was like, I wonder if that's the same term used elsewhere in the Quran, in some of the texts that are relevant at this particular point. And so I started looking through, and I got down to 18, and here's Allah has taken. And so you click on that, and it's from Surat Al-Kahf, the cave. And you have the word here, and here's the, and to warn those who say, Allah has taken a son. It's the exact same idea of Allah taking a son. It's like, well, that's interesting. I go back and I scroll on down a little bit more, and 2391 has it. Yeah, right. 2391. Allah has not taken any son, nor has there ever been with him any deity. If there had been, then each deity would have taken what it created, and some of them would have sought to overcome others. Exalted is Allah above what they describe concerning him. So I found a number of places, Surah 72:3, 18:4, 1935, 2391, this idea of Allah taking a son. Now, why would I be chasing Arabic verb forms through the Quran? Well, this is one of the key areas of conversation between ourselves and our Muslim friends. And given that the Quran functions as the ultimate authority in the Muslim mind, then what does the Quran mean? And has later Muslim orthodoxy expanded on, maybe even changed what the Quran is actually communicating? I think you find a lot of places where that's the case. Allah has not taken any son, nor has there ever been with him any deity. If there had been, then each deity would have taken what it created, and some of them would have sought to overcome others. Exalted is Allah above what they describe concerning him. Now, let's have a little test for those of you who are longtime listeners to the program. Here's the quiz. When the Qur'an says, do not say three, what is always the next assertion in the text of the Qur'an after it says, do not say three? Every single time I speak about Islam and what the Qur'an says about what Christians believe, this is something I emphasize. Every time the Qur'an says do not say three, the very next line is, there is only one God, Allah. The point being, if I say to you, do not say three, and then my next word is, there is only one blank. Whatever you fill in there is what I was saying there's not three of. So if you're a big Yankees fan, you say, do not say that there are the three greatest baseball teams. There is only one great baseball team, the Yankees. Now, in the mind of the author of the Qur'an, to say three is to say three gods. Do not say three, there is only one God. Then the mind of the author of the Qur'an, he has no understanding of what the Trinity actually is. The Trinity is a tritheistic formulation in his mindset. Very clearly. Very clearly. And that comes out here too. Allah has not taken any son, nor has there ever been with him any deity. So, unless these are two different statements, the idea is that a son would be a separate deity. And in fact, competing deity. Because it says, if there had been, then each deity would have taken what it created, and some of them would have sought to overcome others. There would have been some type of disharmony, some type of battle going on. Exalted is Allah above what they describe concerning him. So this is a Unitarian monotheist who has no concept of Trinitarianism at all, arguing against minimally Unitarian henotheism. And I say Unitarian henotheism in the context of any deity is finite and therefore can only be represented by one person. Similar to the pantheons of gods amongst the Canaanites, Amorites, Babylonians, etc. That's what this is. That's what Surah 23 is talking about. So what does it mean to take a son? Allah has not taken any son. They say Allah has taken a son. He is exalted above this. Elsewhere, when it says Allah has a son, how can he have a son if he does not have a consort, a wife, a sexual partner? That's what, Surah 661. The point is that when we talked a little bit about the Qur'an a few days ago and the statements being made by Muslim scholars recognizing that the Qur'an has a textual history and that the mere dismissal of the New Testament based upon the fact that we as Christians recognize the textual history of both the Old and New Testaments, even though the vast majority of Muslims do not recognize the textual history of their own text. If we can get the other side to realize they have to do textual criticism as well, then we can lay aside what is normally used to get around this and say, okay, now that we're dealing with our texts on the same grounds, then let's do the next thing that needs to be done. And that is when New Testament scholars deal with the intertextuality of the New Testament and the Old Testament. That is, our text quotes from the Old Testament all the time. We have, since the beginning, dealt with, well, what version was being rendered? The Greek Septuagint, almost always. What does that have to do with the Hebrew? Why would it have been that way? What about divergent readings between the Hebrew Masoretic text and the Greek Septuagint and issues such as that? We're dealing with intertextuality. And it's a challenging area. I mean, you've seen that Beale Carson edited behemoth of a book talking about the New Testament's use of Old Testament quotations. It's massive. So lots and lots and lots of work gone into that area. Well, here's the issue. If you're a Muslim, you have to deal with intertextuality too. Because even though there's almost no meaningful direct quotation from a written source on the part of the Quran, and you would say, of course not, because Muhammad is passing this on orally. Well, the only problem with that is the Quran says that the Torah was sent down, the Injil was sent down, and the Quran is sent down. So Allah knows what's in each one. And it's plain that many of the stories, for example, Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah, are based on what is found in Genesis 18 and 19. There's no question about that. So why do they each take different forms? Why are there differences between what God says or Lot says or actions that were taken or things like that? There are differences each time it is presented. But the point is, you are stuck with intertextuality. Your own text makes reference to the Torah and Injil and tells their respective communities that they are to judge by what is found in the Torah and Injil. And so any scholarly study, any in-depth study of the Quran is going to have to deal with what sources it used. Now, theologically, there are certain Muslims that say it used no sources at all. It's eternally been written on the heavenly book. There's no sources to look at. The problem is, as soon as you start looking at manuscripts and doing the textual critical work that is necessary on the Quran, you can't avoid asking the question, what was the context in which these manuscripts were produced? And hand in hand with that is, okay, I'm looking at the section of the Quran where Jesus forms clay birds and then breathes on them and they fly away. Now, what is a serious scholar, and to use Dr. Qadi's words, Western scholar, what is a serious, even believing Muslim but Western scholar going to do when you realize that this story is found in sources before the Quran? Well, the Western scholar, now, to be honest with you, a lot of scholars in the East aren't going to care and aren't going to do anything about it at all. But a Western scholar has been trained, I need to take a look at that source. And you take a look at that source and you go, it sort of looks like one's dependent upon the other. Looks like there's verbal parallels, and so you're going to, when I wrote What Every Christian Needs to Know About the Quran, and I was dealing with this particular text, I tracked down the original source in the original language and translated it for the book. And that way you can look at sources and evaluate those sources, right? Well, that's what the Muslim has to do. And that automatically raises the question, yeah, but this is clearly not canonical material. That doesn't come from the first century. And in fact, the Qur'an says that the Injil was given to Jesus. This came hundreds and hundreds of years after that. So is this something outside the Injil? And yet it's considered to be authoritative. It's found in the Qur'an. So this starts raising all of these questions, which is where the real conversation needs to be going. And the standardized answer, which is, well, we don't really have the Torah anymore. It's been lost. Or that's only in reference to what we technically identify as Torah today, which is be Pentateuch, and ignores the Nevi'im and Ketuvim, prophets and writings. That's a standard response. I would suggest to you that's extremely anachronistic. It's making assumptions about what the author of the Quran knew that you don't have any evidence that he actually knew those things. And especially when you talk about a modern Muslim says to me, yeah, well, you know, it's not what you've got in the New Testament. The New Testament, no, that can't be it because you got 4 gospels. There's only supposed to be one gospel. Well, that's one gospel. Just because you have 4 books that tell the one gospel doesn't mean you have 4 different gospels in the sense of 4 different messages. And the early church used the term gospel to refer to the entirety of the Christian message. And you're talking about someone who only has marginal exposure to Orthodox Christian faith, Muhammad, using certain terminology. Now, the Salafi, the conservative, says none of this is Muhammad's terminology anyway. Stay at that point. You're not going to be able to answer most of the questions that are going to be asked about, okay, you say that there's not a fingerprint of man. This is just simply dictated by God. So why does God change the story when he tells the story of Lot? Why does he use sources that are not what he said they were? And what eventually people start going, well, okay, yeah, that would have been Muhammad's understanding. And then you have to start trying to come up with how that fits with some idea of Natsal being sent down, inspiration, revelation. And that's where you start getting into perspectives that already exist within Islam in the West in what would be called liberal Islam, but really getting into areas of tremendous controversy that the conservatives just don't even want to talk about. They don't even want to go there. Lots of important issues, and they're all related to one another. They're all related to one another. And that's why I started this particular verb through the Quran, because I want to be able, when I say the author of the Quran understood to be this in Christian thought, I want to have looked at all the sources that I can look at that are going to be representational of a meaningful and sound Islamic answer. Because when I look at the Quran, I don't see any evidence that the author of the Quran understood what is actually contained in the pages of this New Testament. I just don't. I don't see it. But I want to try to find out. And so I want to be one of the ones that are I'm chasing verbal forms through the Quran in Arabic, rather than just going, guy didn't know what he was talking about. I want to know what does it mean to take a son? And especially in Surah 23:99, 23:91, when it says, Allah has not taken any son, nor has there ever been with him any deity. Is that conjunctive or disjunctive? In other words, is the second part of the sentence meant to be descriptive of or expansive of the first, or are they meant to be two different concepts completely? That would require me to think that, I'm literally thinking this through right now to try to express it in a proper way. That would require me to think that the author of the Quran somehow had a deeper level of knowledge of what the relationship of sonship was. If he's talking about Christianity. If he's not talking about Christianity, that's another issue. Is there have been many interpreters, especially in the West, who have said this doesn't have anything to do with Christianity. This is the 360 idols in the Kaaba, many of which were father, mother, child, triads. That's certainly. I've read even Western scholars trying to come up with weird, wild ways around Surah 5:116. Let me pop that up here. And beware the day when Allah will say, "O Jesus, son of Mary, did you say to the people, 'Take me and my mother as deities besides Allah?' He will say, 'Exalted are you. It was not for me to say that to which I have no right. If I had said it, you would have known it. You know what is within myself, and I do not know what is within yourself. Indeed, it is you who is knower of the unseen.'" I have read what I consider to be next to outlandish interpretations from Western scholars, non-Muslim Western scholars, trying to find some way of rescuing the author from such a blatant misunderstanding of what Christian theology was at the time of the writing of the Quran. Because, I mean, they being non-Muslims don't have the option of saying, well, this is divine revelation and things like that. They're interpreting the Quran as a historical document in a particular context. And so they want to try to protect Muhammad from having just blundered in his understanding of what Christian theology is. But I don't see any way around it. Beware the day when Allah will say, "Oh, Jesus, son of Mary, did you say to the..." So this is God speaking, addressing Jesus, the son of Mary. "Did you say to the people, 'Take me and my mother as deities besides Allah?'" So this is Surah 5, Surah Al-Ma'idah. Surah 4 and 5 contain, I think, all but one or two of the places where it says, do not say three. Maybe all of them, now I think about it. Do not say three. Is right here. So here's your three. Take me and my mother as deities besides Allah. The only place I can find a three anywhere in the Quran. And the description is as deities besides Allah. Now, okay, so that's Minduni, besides from Allah, Minduni. I wonder, no, doesn't show it at 2391. They might have min, but I'd have to pop up 2391. In 2391, and this is the only thing about the Corpus Chronicum, it's not all that fast to get from one thing to another. It says, and there is not kana mahu with him any gods. So you have other deities, and it's ilahin, plural form. The same idea, anyways, of deities besides Allah. Sons he did not take to himself a son. They're not other deities besides Allah. Surah 5:116. Did you say, "Take me and my mother as deities besides Allah"? The constant emphasis in the Quran on Unitarian monotheism, though that's not really the issue at that time. It's just monotheism. Monotheism becomes Unitarian monotheism later on. That is part of the constant narrative, the consistent narrative. You're trying to find consistent narratives in the Quran because it's coming from different parts of Muhammad's life. And one consistent element is this type of polemic against polytheism. But is it a polemic against the polytheism of the Kaaba? And was that just simply assumed to be relevant in application to Christianity? Because I've had many Muslims say you're still a polytheist. You're still a polytheist. That is a part of what many of them say. And they get that from the Quran. Where do you find the evidence anywhere that the author of the Quran really had an understanding of what's actually in the New Testament? That is why you chase verbs through the Quran.